everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Today on the show, we have Deborah Snyder from Synergetic Press. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Joe. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I regularly tell people I think you and your press are doing some of the most important work in the psychedelic and ecological space. Really highbrow and really well done material, generally speaking. I've not seen anything that's slouching. So I think that goes to your credit largely and your vision.
Well, we
So
have a
thank you.
fantastic team. It's really a collective enterprise. So thank you very
Right.
much for that appreciation. We really love that kind of feedback. It helps us to realize we're on the right track.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we're dealing with so many complex things, like in the psychedelic landscape and the protection of the biosphere and like preservation of this thing that we call Earth, right? And I guess what high level before we jump into you, because we've had you on for, I think the last time was Earth Day last year, roughly speaking, and we'll lag a little bit on Earth Day this year, unfortunately, but we'll get you out there and get that message out. But what is Synergetic Press? What do you try to do?
Well, we're looking at bringing bodies of knowledge that help us to understand how the world works primarily, and how our cultures and societies, how to search for a more equitable future for both the planet and for the cultures and the people that have some marginalized voices. We try to bring to the forefront and indigenous wisdom, knowledge, and the cutting edge solutions for how we face the biospheric imperative of supporting life on the planet, and then having a healthy human species there to enjoy it is also a part of our attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how kind of whitewashed mass culture is, where we don't actually even get exposed to things that could give us hope. And there's so much, there's reason for hope. There's reason for despair too, but that's not really what we want to focus on. Positive thinking and positive movement forward. And like, how do we make this planet survive better? Maybe.
Well, yeah, we're looking for. I call us an emerging culture of solutionists that are basically our visionaries. We're looking to become solutionaries, and it is first to become aware of our environment around us, to understand what is broken and what needs to be fixed, and to find, just step by step, to find an approach to your own bioregional environmental pressures is, I think, a really good way to think about it, because it's very difficult to. I've spent years thinking about, we're going to save the planet, and after decades of effort, which is, one can be quite run down from after a while, it's more productive to really be finding demonstrations, ways, showing things that work. There's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and we should definitely be using everything, everywhere, all at once, to quote the United Nations head that was looking at how do we approach this problem. And it's books are one way to get ideas across that have been formulated in some case, for many years of people's lives. But then we have to then put those ideas out there into our communities, into people's hands, and give the tools of these ideas to the next generation, which is emerging to do exactly that, to find the solutions.
Mm-hmm. Right. And share them. And that's, why a media company, right? And Synergetic Press wasn't your first major project, right? Could you talk a little bit about the, was it Institute of Ecotechnics?
Yes, the Institute of Ecotechnics started in the early 70s. It grew out of a group of individuals that formed an intentional community here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, to basically develop an approach to, one, living in a community, and two, to how can we find ways to design the technosphere to live, to exist and work in harmony and support with the biosphere. which is one of our fundamental challenges right now on the planet. So, they had no idea what was going to be learned, but it's an experiential institution where we then went out to build. And I was still not here until 1981. This started in 1974. This effort with a conference on planet Earth to start to study it. Buckminster Fuller's ideas were also very predominant in those days, or loomed large. And his Spaceship Earth book came out, and in it there was the recognition that we live on planet water, and that over 70% of the planet is water. And so, in order to discover or study the biosphere, that group of individuals decided that a ship needed to be built, and they needed to have a project that would go out on the ocean that would be dedicated to exploring the planet water. And that project is called the Heraclitis. There's a photograph of the Heraclitis over here, which has been sailing over 270,000 miles around the planet, exploring everything from ethnobotany to mapping and monitoring the coral reefs in the Indian Ocean, and studying different cultures, oral history. We're going back to the Amazon area. We're in the middle of rebuilding this ship. So these were long-term efforts. The other efforts that were made at that particular project were then broke out. The ranch in New Mexico, being a degraded grassland, desertified grassland, is the headquarters of the Institute, where it all started. And there's 50 years of history there. So all I could say to briefly summarize is we worked on different biomic projects, built a rainforest project in Puerto Rico, which is called Las Casas de la Selva, that is sustainable forestry, a 900-acre sustainable forestry program, and it is being hit a couple times by the hurricane, but we are continuing to bounce back and use that for agroforestry, for plant species. We're an award-winning forestry program there. We have a cultural center, a city biome project called the October Gallery in London, which many people might have heard about. And we're dedicated to a demonstration of a city biome project, which is something I want to talk about a little bit more. This is a human-made biome on the planet. It's not a naturally occurring biome, but it is an entire biomic ecological unit, the cities around the planet. So we have a big garden there in the middle where we have plants and trees that are growing to remind us that, even though we're in a city, that there is the world of life, and tending to life is very important and helps with the oxygen in the courtyard area. Those are the main projects that we work with today. We've done other work in different biomes. In the Australian outback, we did a 45-year effort in pastoral regeneration, and that project continues to show how you can restore degraded pasture land. And here we're continuing to work on healthy soil initiatives at the ranch. We are having a workshop building Johnson Sioux bioreactors this weekend, and working with a number of a coalition of small groups here in New Mexico that are, we call ourselves a regenerative coalition, regeneration coalition, and doing landscape scale restoration of the grasslands around Santa Fe. There's biochar factories that are being built. There's a lot of people coming to the plate in my experience here. So the Institute has been for 50 years holding conferences, workshops, these demonstration projects, and helping to build now coalition and educational opportunities to people to be able to start to, find the tools and the techniques and just to inspire others to go out and do the same themselves.
And I recall there being some projects around bringing psychedelic folks together with scientists from other fields and explorers from other fields. Was that inside the Institute?
Not that was not us,
Okay.
but we do work. We try. Our main philosophy is interdisciplinary approach to the study of anything. So we would want artists, we would want scientists, explorers, medical practitioners to come together to talk about a given topic. We did brain, body, and behavior one year was the theme for a conference, and these are all many of these conferences are were recorded, and we are in the process of getting the talks by people like Buckminster Fuller, Thora Heyerdahl, Albert Hoffman, John Lilly. We had them all, to these conferences, and the scientists would be listening to the explorers or the artist, and trying to learn how, to appreciate the other languages, which in the last 30 years, we've really grown, I think, as a society, to be able to, be much more open to the artistic representatives that are coming in, and I think science has embraced much more now the understanding that art can also influence the scientific world and vice versa. We're seeing so much of that. An integration of this is the age of Aquarius, I do believe, officially now. So it makes sense.
Totally. And the most famous project, probably Biosphere II.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was recently a film made about it. Is that right?
Yes. A couple of years ago, there was a documentary. That experiment was it's an ongoing experiment. Biosphere 2 was a culmination of these different biomic projects that the Institute engaged in for that 40-year period of time. And it was really John Allen, the visionary behind that laboratory for global ecology that was designed and built 84 to 1994 in near north of Tucson, Arizona. Taught us so much because we felt because that was a huge undertaking to really show that biomes are the building blocks of the biosphere, and that Vladimir Vernadsky's theory of the biosphere, that life is a coevolutionary, self-sustaining force on the planet. That was one of the theories that was being tested. And of course, many spin-off technologies came out of that. Many spin-off learnings came out of that exercise in putting together the minimum size to recreate a working biosphere. And by studying, because our Earth's biosphere is so big, it's really hard to see it. And we saw the first picture of the Earth from space when the astronauts sent us a photograph back. The whole Earth catalog came out. Really, now they call it the overview effect, where you can see that there are no national boundaries. There's, it's the atmosphere. It's this thin layer of life around. It's a 70-mile layer of life around the planet. That's all there is to it, actually, before the layer of life. So you can see how fragile it might look, but it's actually very resilient as well. It does have its breaking points. But so being able to see that a unit of something called a biosphere in a small miniature, be able to take a picture of it, was very powerful. And it became it's quite iconic in the sense that now the word biosphere was not a commonly understood word. I had to spell it on the phone every time I said it. I was publishing the Biosphere catalog. It was, it was not common vernacular, but people do know now what a biosphere is, sort of, but still not quite as many people as I would like to say can. But once you see a biosphere, then you can't unsee a biosphere. So you see those layers of connectivity that make it up: the soil, the atmosphere, the water, the hydrosphere, the geosphere. When does life end? Down at the necrosphere, which is the sphere of death around the planet, where fossil fuels start to get formed, and take millennia. So being able to see a biosphere and understand the biosedimentation processes and the interactions and everything like that, once you see that, then it's really difficult to go outside and do something like put paint down into your driveway without knowing, because there is no way. In Biosphere 2, what we learned was that there's no way. You can't throw anything away because it was a materially closed system. So they had to figure out what to do with all the waste. And one of the other things was that there's the word waste is something that our culture has created, but it is becoming more understood that what is one person's waste product is another person's raw materials, or another industry's raw materials. So we are now, as a planetary species, starting to find ways that we can think in a closed loop approach to managing our resources if we want to stop the entry, the pillage, and the compromising the biosphere in the manner in which our technosphere has been designed to. So these things can be righted. There are definitely ways, once you have the understanding that basically, you have to have a closed loop approach to your industry.
Mm-hmm. Right. And this is, I think, most popularized in something like a regenerative ag or permaculture, where we're seeing this, and we just need to really scale that concept up, because usually it's only seen in a backyard scale, right? It's how can we make a city or a state or a whole continent?
Yeah. But it's like so one of the new books we have coming out, I'm really excited about, is called The Regenerative Landscaper, by Eric Olson, and he's basically teaching people or showing people ways that he's been deeply involved in permaculture for a long time, and he's approaching the individual homeowner, their land, if your own backyard. Exactly. What can you do to turn your backyard into a meadow? What can you do to turn your front yard into a more regenerative type landscape where, not these pristine, fertilized green grass lawn kind of scenarios, which covers such a vast part of our planet. If we could even convert on the individual levels those areas, that's a huge part of the surface of the planet is suburbia, and But so it's like it's changing our view about what looks right and what looks what is the goal. Right now, where we live, of course, green grassy lawns is not exactly the goal for most of the people that are homeowners here, but there's still some. So it's changing, I think, our values about what we think. If we can start to value something that is going to give add value to nature, more than just what we think is what a healthy suburban house is supposed to look like. If we can influence that a little bit, just step by step, and start to get that a different understanding, so it's really changing the way we see to a large degree, I think, to get the idea across about whole systems thinking, and that everything is all connected, and that we are connected to everything as well, is to be able. It's just once you get that cycle of life, and this is something that happens, psychedelic medicine, plant medicine, any kind of meditation or exercises that a person might do to bring them more in contact with their themselves, often brings this contact with this understanding that we are nature. And it's not like we are part of nature, we are actually nature. And this is an indigenous concept that Western culture has abandoned or never had to begin with. I'm not sure, or something about whenever our industrial technological revolution gave us ways that we could start to live without nature as our main support system. That's when we started to lose the plot, because there wasn't closed loop thinking. There wasn't the what would be the long-term effects of these things. So we're starting to see that now. I don't think humanity went into this intentionally, but at the same time, as we start to recognize the science, we should not be in denial. We should be activated to right the course of the ship, to and a lot of it goes to education, and there's we can talk about that. Why don't we have ecology lessons in our elementary schools? Why do we not learn from a very young age, unless we go to some specialized school? Do we get our hands dirty, understand the importance of soil? I get volunteers that came here over the last decade, and I'm like, well, did you ever study ecology? And they're already in college, and maybe now they're getting their environmental design classes. So I question why that is, but I don't have an answer for it particularly, except that we lost the plot.
Well, and there's industrialized forces working against it. There's business interests. There's kind of stupid business interests. It's not really enlightened self-interest in the way we want to think about it, working to keep us a bit ignorant. And that's why it's important that folks like yourself and Psychedelics Today are coming and making this stuff more a topic for conversation. Like I'm sure you were and are as frustrated as me about how little and how late even left-leaning media outlets were around carbon and ecological discussion. Right? It's just outrageous to me that even the party that we hope would help us has just maybe kind of barely got here. Mm-hmm. And barely I think is the right phrase, maybe.
Yeah, the invested interest, political will, are and the world market, three incredible forces that do not have, and they're headless. They're a bit headless. Who do you go to? You can't go, who's in charge of the world market? I'm going to go talk to them. So they're headless forces on the planet, and it takes strong political will, strong political leadership. I know that I believe it was the Netherlands, a couple years ago, they elected some younger politicians. They also, the youth of that country passed a law that, I believe it's the Netherlands, we can check that fact later, but they passed a law where their elected politicians are forced to make the right decision about doing things that affect the climate, doing things that affect the ecology. They are forced they will go to prison if they vote to do something that is going to somehow squander their natural resources or pollute their area. Or so they had, but the youth of that country had to put that, they got a law in there, and they put that in there. Our politicians do not face any consequences for, it's just like, okay, well, you're corrupt, and then maybe we'll put you in prison. There's no political consequences for votes that are made that have negative impacts on our environment, and that's really up to us as citizens and our vote and everything. That's how we can have impact with the political system. The only way we can have impact with the political system, and I hope every young person that's out here is at the age to vote knows that that's their number one weapon that they have. They have, it's, and then you can persist to resist. You have to pay attention to what is going on in your local political sphere, and you have to vote in the elections. In Australia, I love it. They force you're required to vote, or you get fined. So those are societies where their political system is set up where the social good is the number one priority, and private property and pursuit of happiness are like number two and number three. In America, we have a philosophy embedded in our politics is is private property is number one, and we have a situation where we are losing our common areas, the disappearing commons that Vandana Shiva writes about for decades, and it's happening without our knowledge, particularly unless we are watching very carefully. So private companies, corporations, they're buying up agricultural land, small farms, and things, so that these common areas become controlled by private interests. So that is a risk when it's done without the political checks and balances to make sure that there is not an excess. But I mean, the EPA, is that our main governing body to control misdeeds? It's hard. It's really
Yeah, like I don't really know if Exxon's really paid up for Valdez yet, and it's been quite a bit of time. For instance, if that's our, so some people need to go to jail so that we can incentivize people to start acting right. And I think Netherlands would be a good case, right? Because they're 26% of the country is underwater, or sorry, under sea level, and it's going to be very expensive for them. So the incentive is there to try to keep the country above water as long as possible, which it's going to be hard. So I wanted to kind of shift into hope. A book I really want to read, and I haven't yet, but I love the title so much that I bring it up. Timothy Leary's Confessions of a Hope Dealer. Like I feel like
a hope fiend.
This hope fiend.
Yeah.
I love that.
One of my favorite books.
He's like really just with that title alone inspiring us to issue hope to each other. And how do we do that, right? It's to be pessimistic, I think, is to make the wrong attitude decision about how much we're going to have to act here. Have you seen much of a shift in how do you all at Synergetic and the Institute try to instill optimism?
Well, I think it's a very good question. I think it's kind of a type thing. Some people are just basically optimistic and other people are pessimistic. Some people say that anybody that's optimistic is definitely can't see reality in front of their face. But at the same time, we have the laws of physics. So for every affirmation, there's an equal and opposite response to that. So persisting to resist is kind of what we, just keep on keeping on, and looking for and always looking for the new. We're open to the being open to the new. It is this echo grief, and the younger people that are coming to the ranch and to my attention are facing tremendous. That's where I want to bring these solutions to as quickly as possible, because there are solutions, and there is no. I mean, this is the worst situation that humanity has put the biosphere in. We've had a very, very stable atmosphere for tens of thousands of years. It was always very volatile in the beginning. I mean, the atmosphere of the biosphere has changed dramatically. We've gone through ice ages. We've gone through, it's, but right now humanity is clear. We're in the Anthropocene, where humanity is the most dominant geological force on the planet. We move more matter around the planet than the geosphere did for thousands and thousands of years. And so that's disruptive. Just knowing that we can bring solutions to mitigate this, but it's going to some people are committing suicide. I'm hearing about young people, in Europe, and I was with Gail Bradbrook yesterday or a couple days ago from Extinction Rebellion, talking about this situation where people don't see they can read the writing is on the walls, and they can see that there's no political will to make any changes, and so I mean, yes, we would like to have some kind of breakthroughs, and I keep holding out with the understanding that necessity is the mother of invention. So that means that we will, as soon as it becomes absolutely necessary, then the invested interest will start to move. But we can, as communities, actually do a lot more. We cannot wait for political will to start moving. So there's grassroots citizens movements, and there's communities around the world that are, and this is, I'm talking more about the Anglo-Saxon, or the Northern Hemisphere, where you see a significant rallying, and it takes leadership. I think that we should ally with organized groups. And if you have somebody that's a leader, support those leaders and help them rally to those leaders. And it's at this point coalition building. So we are actively working on doing that, because there's so many people doing things very small scale, siloed, a little bit siloed, trying to get access to all of the big grants that are available for, large scale soil health remediation. And these are like $100 million grants that you have to go for, and no small farm is going to be able to do that. So what we're trying to do now is there's something called the Open Future Coalition, which is a network of networks, and people from all around the world are starting to just merge and ally and form alliances, so that we can together form groups that can be funded, take that, change the philanthropic kind of model a bit, so that we can actually fund a whole group of nonprofits, like 20 nonprofits that are all working in the Amazon area. So there's a lot to be optimistic about, but actually it's really a roll up your sleeves kind of time, and be active and do as much as you possibly can to just find even something that you can do in your own backyard, if it's just the recycling thing, or just to try to improve the system. We have to be coming with solutions. We can't just be complaining about the situation. So, that's, I think, something that it would be healthy for everybody to approach.
Agreed. Yeah. It's, I think that alone, like, if you're just going to complain, you're just taking people down with you. But if you learn dig a little deeper into the scary thing and find out what people are talking about for solutions, that can help bring more optimism. Oh, cool. Look at these 3 new projects that all look pretty interesting. But I think your line is right. Like, we need it all right now.
And also, with regards to the invested interests, that's where the persist to resist comes in. It's the market will respond. The world market, which is really what's the main thing driving our current biospheric predicament, does respond to consumer demand, and that's our only tool of defense with the world market, is our what we want and what we decide that we need, and so on the individual level, we can make our choices, and I know many people that do. It's offering finding solutions for those. The agrochemical industrial complex, we knows that they have a problem with the chemical fertilizer scenario that we're embedded with in the large parts of the Midwest and other large farming areas. So how do we offer an alternative? So what we're doing with the Johnson Su bioreactor technology, which is a concentrated organic compost that we're doing citizen trials to show that it's like maybe a 50%, maybe 100% increase in the actual crop production for those Johnson Su infused composts that get planted. And it's an alternative. It's a highly effective fertilizer that is completely organic, and it's just made over the course, it's just a high grade composting system. And that can increase, we can show growers that that's going to increase their yield by 50 to 100% without adding expensive chemical fertilizers. Then that changes the entire equation. And it doesn't matter whether or not these farmers believe in climate change at all. They really need to know. My family are farmers in Illinois. They are out there looking for solutions, and I'm hoping that some of these things might actually pay off in the end, because they want lower costs. They don't want to spend a lot of money on these chemical fertilizers, which probably they'll know it, and the insecticides and things like that are being used to the highest level of cancer in the country, in the Midwest areas, in 60, 50, 55-year-olds, and can you connect the dots? You've been out spraying these insecticides on the farm for the last 50 years. It's going to impact you. So getting awareness and offering solutions for alternatives is the way forward. That is the solution. The solution is giving the industries alternatives. They now, and they are being incentivized now to do that. I think that the automobile companies are starting to actually think a longer term, and they're the ones that are the most responsible, and they should be. And because the situation about unchecked fossil fuel emissions, that's one of the largest contributors to our situation right now. But still, there's a lot to keep track of what all the solutions are. So it's at this point, anybody that can lead and help network and form, organize your local groups so that you can have a share with others that are doing similar things is really helping a lot to drive this.
Yeah. We just need there's so many things we need, but yeah, like you're right. As an individual, just jump in. You don't need to take on Exxon if you're living in a town where you can, make a really major difference and teach a lot of people a lot of things. And this stuff scales, right? Like once you start teaching a lot of people want a healthier environment for themselves. Like the cancer thing is real. Yeah, I think about people I've lost to probably house cleaning chemicals. It's like, why on earth are you using stuff in a closed environment that's so toxic? But even something that simple, and that goes downstream to making sure the water downstream of you is not as polluted. And there's so much to that, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of education that is needed, and so people are starting to rise up to kind of help develop. We're developing some educational programs in biospheric thinking. I mean, it's the main way we try to operate is to hands-on learning, offer opportunities, and we're developing a little bit more so we can reach more people, more online conversations, talks, lectures. We want to develop more of a webinar. At the Institute, we'll be developing more talks that just directly share insight into some of the techniques that we've been doing and applying and what works, and bringing other people that are in our agroecology community here into the conversation. We have some things that are actually on the ground happening to demonstrate things like wastewater treatment systems on a larger scale, which we're trying to in the Mesopotamian marshes of Iraq. We have already built half of the reed bed for the wastewater garden there that will treat a village, the sewage from a village of 7,000 people that has been for I don't know how many years just pumped purely straight into untreated sewage into the Mesopotamian, where they have a huge drought, they have terrible water shortages and things like that, and they have many other factors that are. But in spite of that, there is a large movement, and now there is political will because the Minister of the Environment, the newly elected Minister of the Environment there, has had an interest in the restoration of the marshes. So, voila. The money, after 12 years of working to try to get the money raised to build this system, is now flowing. And we did break ground a couple of months ago. And that demonstration of how you can just use ecology, hardly any technology, to clean up 98% of your fecal coliform bacteria in your waste sewage, and then put that fresh, cleaned up water back into the system, has a lot of appeal. And they think that, this is something that could be distributed or put into effect, applied in many, many coastal areas throughout the Middle Eastern basin area. So that's an example of, but it took 12 years to get that obvious solution in place. So you have to persist to resist. And then at this point, I think it's necessity is driving this. So we like to learn by doing, but it's not easy to find opportunities. And we would like to be able to find more ways to reach more people that are looking for, like this program here, the Institute of Ecotechnics. Happy to share learning. For us, it's how to transmit ideas. We're getting older. I'm now called an elder, which is frightening. But, so we also have a duty to try to transmit that which works. And I would say that now in the last 5 years, we are seeing a renaissance of people coming, looking for solutions, looking for answers. We did not have people traveling here and coming and looking. There was about a 10-year period of, I think everybody was all very comfortable, and it just there wasn't enough of that necessity to get people out there. But never be afraid to just. You don't have to have a degree to go out and learn to do something. We have become, Buckminster Fuller said that the rise of specialization in our educational systems, he was writing back in the 50s, when we started, everybody had to get degrees in, what are you going to become a specialist in? That was the end of education in his view. Before that, people learned a little bit more of a diverse, our educational systems were a bit more interdisciplinary or more generalist kind of education. So I do think that our educational systems should be put to task. I think we have many wonderful educators out there, but there are constraints. And I hope that, the things that they're arguing about in the school boards is ridiculous. What should be in the textbooks and what should not, but nobody's talking about the fact that there's no ecological textbooks. When you talk about economics, which is what the world market is driven by economics, it's like economics has become the main thing that's driving the planet when it's really ecology, because ecology is the house. Ecology is the house. Economics is the business of running the house. And if we have it the other way around, where economics is the master, as we can see, the house is running down. And we want syntropy to fight against entropy.
My philosophy professor called it negentropy, which is fun. So it's interesting. So yeah, obviously education, sharing, getting involved are all big. But you also publish books on psychedelics, right? You've been friendly with Tim Leary. You've published Dennis McKenna. Did you publish Dennis's book?
We just did the second edition of his memoir. Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah. Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss. Great. Yeah. And important books for sure. So like what is it about psychedelics that might be able to transform people to jump in and say, oh yeah, I've been living a little bit too narrow of a life. Maybe I need to help out in this capacity ecologically or otherwise.
There is, I would say that in other parts of the world where people live more with nature, they don't really need to have these lessons. I would say that in our more Western societies, where we have become quite alienated from nature, just as a result of these comforts that we've learned to enjoy, standards of life, standards of living that, living in the city, driving to work, or, whatever it is that the large part of human population in the northern hemisphere, at least, is has been separated because of the conditions that we live in from this experience with nature. And so, why, how do we allow ourselves to go for so long? Some people, they break out. They're okay. They're going to take their 2 months and go walking in the Appalachian Mountains and unplug and find some balance where they have not been totally disconnected from nature. But a lot of people don't have that luxury, and so how do we help people to remember themselves and to remember their wilderness selves and to recognize that they have become disconnected with nature? I don't know the answers to that. These programs and things like that, people are becoming more aware, but again, it's, maybe it's a small sliver of the size of the population. How much of humanity can wake up and become conscious all at once? We know that there's always different types of people that will be around. So we want to find more ways that people can remember themselves. Remembering means putting your members back together again, and recognize the importance of that. What nature does. So we really need to have those plants to produce the oxygen, and I think people are getting a little bit back to nature. The substances that people may use to help them for their spiritual growth, maybe they don't know that they're alienated from nature, and they're just going out on a weekend thrill ride, and then they have an experience that brings them more in contact with nature. What do they do with that? Do they remember? Will they remember that the next day? Let's just hope that these experiences can be, once we get a culture of people that starts to emerge, and I think it will just come with a natural progression with the next generations as they grow up very rapidly in our current conditions, where they require, they demand that we have this connection with nature, and I can see it for sure. It's like slowly turning a ship, a big ship. So it's change. It can happen, but it happens slowly. So there's a bit of that. What to do with that experience? I call it the aha moment. When you're sitting there and you've been doing your holotropic breath work, or you've been doing something with a sacred plant, and you had some intention in mind, and you recognize that, well, that's a gift. I mean, that's a gift from some people think that the plants are trying to teach us. It's and then there's the question of how can it have access and training and integration, which is thankfully something that is getting more robust in our society, in our Western society up here, and in other places where there's more of a process of taking that moment of enlightenment or that burst of insight that somebody has, and integrating that into an understanding that is an organic understanding that can shift a person's actions and what they see as important, and just even to be able to see something for the first time. So I think it is important. I don't think it's the mass mass society solution. I think that economics continue to drive that complex, but the more people that are awake and connected, the better. And as the war on drugs begins to become rational, and decriminalization of these tools becomes more accessible, we can start to build a society, I think, that is a bit more connected with nature and a bit more connected to each other, because these things don't just give you an aha connection with nature. They also give them connection with yourself, and they can give you connection with others. And all of those things have to be happening. And the way that we plan our city planning, our communities, there are some really interesting new community models that are emerging in pockets, and then to keep your eyes open. If you're not happy in your community, look for the others.
Hmm.
Find the
Exactly.
others. They're out
There
there.
it is. There it is. That's the thing that always like brings me back. It's like, oh, you find the others and you feel hope, you feel connected, and you feel like doing things. It's not just like, oh yeah, great, I met you. I'm gonna let you do everything for me. It's like, no, I actually want to do stuff with you. And
If
there's
there's no
so many cool
organized
people
group
out there.
around you to join, then organize a group. Find the others
Hmm.
and have your small group. And then, it is the question is it going to be grassroots movements that are going to shift, or is it going to be, influencing the corporate boardrooms so they start to put the value of nature on their balance sheets? It's, I think,
Right.
both. I think it has to be both. And I think that people should have hope, should have whatever it is that's in their throats that's stopping them from talking. Hopefully, by meeting some others, you can start to talk together. And then, a way of action is a really good way to live, and a purpose and intention. I think, if you can find any others and that you can coalesce your idea around something, this gives a lot of strength, and I think it also produces hope.
So, I guess when I got started, it was about 2008 or so. I got pretty active coordinating stuff, and it was always ecology and psychedelics. I was like flipping between care for planet and care for, well, just I don't even know if it's care, exploration, expansion, whatever we might want to call it. Um, and it was a really cool model. And I would really hope people do this. There's great groups out there, the psychedelic societies, the psychedelic club organization can help you set up your own local thing. But consider pairing that with an ecological lens, because yeah, young people are getting their futures robbed, and they want it back, and they want to get active. Um,
Well, it's be part of the solution and not the problem. That's the first step. And it does take a moment of enlightenment in many people, where their culture has not given them, the ability to see this, see the truth behind, what we have been given, what our culture has given us as good. Our culture has told us these things are all good, and we have, you know, responsibly pursued those pursuits. But now we are seeing the results of some of those uh, uh, that are not producing what we need to assure the long-term sustainability of the bio. I would say the biosphere is going to survive whatever we throw at it, in one shape or form. It's not going to be the biosphere that dies. It just could be the capability of this biosphere to support human life that is being challenged. And I was mentioning how we had, for many millennium, we had a very stable atmosphere that was, for the first time ever, we had, in after. But then once the industrial revolution hit, you can track it, that we get, and we pushed it from 250 parts per million in 1984 to over 400 parts per million CO2 in the atmosphere. That's like almost a doubling. I think it's probably 450. It could be doubled now in just 30 years. And that should really show uh, um, the significance of why we're in the period of consequences, as Churchill said. We are in the period of the consequences of our actions. And I do like to remember to everybody that it was Exxon and Mobil that were the boards of those fossil fuel emission companies that decided in their boardroom 35 years ago that they were going to ignore the science. That had told them clearly that unchecked fossil fuel emissions will cause irreparable, irreversible damage to the atmosphere. They knew it then. They chose to go ahead with their fuel-driven vehicles, and there are New York Times articles about this and everything. So, to talk about those times. So those decisions were made by 30 men, all men in a boardroom. But so it's like How did we get to here? And now we're untangling it, and we're seeking a rapid addressing of these consequences. We're seeking solutions to mitigate the impacts of climate change. Climate change is with us, we live with it. And then we are looking at how we can, there is a responsibility of the North to help the islands in the South that are going to be that are flooding now, and that have sea rise with the relocation. We have not seen yet the, the what is to come. And I have to say, when I was with the UK Psychedelic Society a few days ago with Gail Ball-Weber, and I had Rosalind Watts and Lara Tambapulu was there, we were discussing planetary stewardship and eco grief that they had thrown in there, because it's like it's a real thing. So we have to kind of like bandage those wounds of that eco grief, because that's afflicting these young kids. But they're all saying, I was here with a youth group a few years ago where they were Earth Care. Everybody in the audience, half the people in the audience were over white haired, and the other half were youth groups. And I'm in there saying, we're talking about the state of the planet. And this was even 5 years ago, when things were not even as dire as they look now. And the girls are, everybody's saying, well, we're really sorry that we left you with this. And then the leader of the youth group, Earth Care, stood up and said very eloquently, she says, I don't want to hear any more apologies from any of you. No more apologies. I don't want to hear it. We have what we have. Just get out of your seat and go and join active groups and do something. That's all their interest. That's all the young kids want to see, is that, and it's like, so we have to get, my generation, the guilt trip, but stay positive and keep active. And, for taking those moments of clarity, and when you can see the truth, how to remember that, how to put that into your body, and how to become a more balanced human being, because only somebody that is a balanced human being is going to really be able to live fully and in harmony with their nature around them. I mean, some people are more intellectual, and that's fine. These are all, important things. But even then, just to find little things that you can do to help give you a little balance, variation in your life, so that you're not just always at the desk thinking, and you spend some time outside working in the garden. These are things I say to myself. I'm talking to myself right now. To remain a healthy human being and help happy, healthy human beings in a community that's mutually supporting. They're going to take care of their environment. Nobody's going to just sit there and just walk by that, desertified place that's being trashed out, and turn their eye to another direction, because it's part of their world. It's part of their community. And so we have a lot of alienation. It's not only do we not necessarily know who our next door neighbors are, but it's you can really just find one thing and a day, and change that one thing a day, and then step by step. I love Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Real change happens one step at a time.
It's very incremental, very one by one, which is why we all need to be active. And we're coming close to the end, but I really would love it if you could share a little bit about the Heraclitis and what's going on there.
The good ship Heraclitis has been, we like to say that she's rebuilding herself. We've had, this ship was very tired after 35 years, so we put it into dry dock in Spain, where she had been working for a number of years doing oral history, recording with the lighthouse operators, fishermen, and other coastal communities as part of their intangible cultural oral history program. But so it's been out rebuilding. It's been a ship rebuilding operation for the last almost a decade now. COVID did shut it down for about 3 years, but we're getting it ready to get back into the water. The hull has been completed. It's an 82-foot ferro cement Chinese junk design ship that was initially built in 1975 by the Institute in Oakland, California. And we're rebuilding it again with the help of many, many volunteers and many partners and sponsors that have helped to essentially replace about 85% of the hull. We rebuilt it all down to the keel, and it's going to be more sophisticated. It'll be instrumented. It'll be going back to Colombia as our first port of call. We'll be getting there sometime in the next year or so to complete the outfitting and get it into the waters there to start working on shining a spotlight on the cultures there and the ecology in the region, and developing educational platforms for people who want to study in depth in that region, getting probably up the Magdalene River to start with. So we'll be looking at South America for a while, and then we'll continue out to study the rest of the oceans, and continue to sail the ship around for another 35, 40 years, we hope, and particularly developing the educational platform using the technology that we have now for classrooms at sea and things like that. So it's really exciting. It's been a while since we've had our ocean going a project in the water, and we can feel we're missing that significant part of the planet in exploration and contacting with different cultures and different peoples. So that's a very exciting project. A lot of the history of the ship is also with the Amazon, and we want to return to some of the places that we had gone, doing some early ethnobotanical studies under the instigation of Richard Evans Schultes. So a little bit of really helping to continue the work of preserving the lore of the Amazon and plant wisdom and reciprocity. Will you say that for me?
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Thank you. To the and further understanding, really, of just the ways of forest care, land care from the people of place, and sharing and developing, really a multicultural platform for people to experience and to learn how to live at sea.
And there's a really robust page at the Institute of Ecotechnics website on the Heraclitis. There's a really great quote you have here from Wade Davis. Can I read that?
Sure.
Yeah, he says, the Heraclitis is a symbol of hope, a moving ship, a moving platform of poets, artists, dreamers, scientists, exemplifying by their own sincerity and intent our own human quest, celebrating everything we are. And I love that. And Wade Davis, obviously an amazing person.
He is, and we continue to ally with some of these incredible individuals that have brought so much to our understanding about things like ethnobotany, plant lore, the Amazon. Wade was a brilliant student of Richard Evans Schultes's. Dennis McKenna is also working very much in the ethnobotanical space, and of course, we work together on various book projects, and we'll be bringing other. There's Mark Plotkins, the Amazon conservation team work there, really looking now to build. And I can't wait to get to Colombia myself. I've never been, but working now to build the coalition of individuals and organizations in that region that will help to have a broad base of study and learning that the ship can be part of.
Yeah, amazing. And I love seeing the photos of the Heraclitus. There's so many cool shots of it in different environments and regions. So I really hope to get to see it someday. And it's amazing. What a great learning tool and exploration tool and teaching tool.
And it's a spirit of adventure. There's so many. This is one way to. We want to. Our projects tend to inspire young people to go off and create their own projects and do things. So for those reasons alone, it's all worth the endeavor. We offer, the ship is just a ship of dreams and adventures for so many different people. And because it's an outrageous ship. I mean, who would have thought of building an 82-foot ferroconcrete? It's one of the few ships that are built out of ferroconcrete that size in the world. There's not a lot, but it's built with ferroconcrete because it's so safe. We wanted safety first, speed second, comfort third. So it's, and but there's definitely been even improvements in the strength. Mapai is a corporation that developed the special mixture of the ferroconcrete that we used to pour the hull, and it's magnificent. We'll be putting some video footage of the new hull up together soon, and stay tuned to the Institute of Ecotechnics website. We'll have a newsletter coming out in the next month that's going to begin to have regular stories and updates about these different projects. So that's one thing that we're doing now, is really upping the amount of outreach that we do to allow people to know more about these ecotechnic projects. And so stay tuned, and thank you very much for letting me talk about some of these programs with your audience here, which is significant, and people that are already searching for the new ways and what to do with the experiences that they have had. So really appreciate this.
Yeah, absolutely, Deborah. I really appreciate what you all are up to, and I love the merging of the two, because I think it's so important that we think of ourselves as part of the planet and part of a larger system, many larger systems.
For years, people thought it was man and nature. I mean, it was all during the 70s. It was all man and nature, and that's why we got to the point where we basically were going to conquer nature. Humbaba, cut down that tree. The Western mindset of we are going to conquer nature. Even it's still, and hopefully that worldview is starting to crack.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's better that we become more like gardeners of the earth, instead of, plundering and pillaging.
Did you read Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake series? It's a really special book, or trilogy that Margaret Atwood put out. And there was a cult called God's Gardeners in it. And it was so good. It was the cult I would love to start, because it's all about ecology and understanding your whole thing.
You could call us all cultivators.
The Cultivator Project. I love that. Amazing. All right, Deborah. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I do hope everybody goes and checks out your websites and learns more. And please keep it going.
Okay, we will. Thank you. You too, Joe. You're doing very important work.
Thank you.